Elden Ring highlights my main issues with Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I'm ready to talk about it. Let's get into it. Hey, how's it going? Honest to Critic here, and I'm ready to speak on probably what's going to be a hot button topic, which is, and we've seen it before, and we all know Zelda's been around for the longest. Breath of the Wild has been talked about compared to so many other games by journalists, by countless content creators. But unlike those content creators, which mostly come from a positive side, especially the journalists, where they loved Breath of the Wild and they want to make comparisons because they feel Breath of the Wild was this breath of fresh air that revitalized the open world. I, on the other hand, am coming from a different perspective, because if you follow me on Twitter, if you've seen me speak on Breath of the Wild, my name for it is more like Breath of Restriction. So I'm coming from a completely different aspect to where I want to speak on Elden Ring and why Elden Ring does things right, while Breath of the Wild did a lot of things wrong. And I want to start off by saying that Elden Ring, in general, is just more fun to play. And I know what you're thinking. He did not use the word fun to describe Elden Ring. Who uses the word fun to describe any Souls game, any From Software game, right? They're not fun to play. But here's the thing, right? They can be very fun and very gripping games as long as you understand the genre and you know what you're getting into. And I'm going to drop some facts about why they made design choices that are fun, and that those same design choices that were made in Zelda Breath of the Wild are what made it less fun. And the first thing that comes to mind is your horse, right? Because you're going to be traversing this big world. I don't know comparison-wise how big Elden Ring's world is compared to Zelda, because I haven't beat it. I haven't discovered I haven't uncovered all of its map. But we can agree that Zelda has a pretty big open world. And it, right off the bat, it's almost like it forgot its roots, because in past Zeldas, right, you get off, Epona, and you can just, spirit her back. You can just play your, I'm thinking of Ocarina of Time, because that's one of my favorite Zelda games, and you can just play your flute, and boom, there she is. It's not, you play your flute, and she tries to get around a canyon to get to you, because you got off of her, and you just decided, I want to get across this canyon, I want to glide, to get around the landscape faster, which, why wouldn't you? There's a lot of different landscapes in Breath of the Wild, and you don't want to always be on horseback, right? You might want to glide to get somewhere faster. It's a different type of landscape than what you see in, Elden Ring. So instead of her just appearing where you are, what does your horse do in Breath of the Wild? It tries to find a way around an impossible gap. It doesn't just appear. And right off the bat, it's like the makers of Elden Ring, From Software, they knew this would be a pain in the ass if we had just your horse try to get to you no matter where you go. So they knew, we have to make this horse free. And this is nothing new. This has been done in Zelda games, like I just pointed out. This is nothing new, but once again, a design choice that just baffled me. Especially now that you have an open world, like now more than ever, having your horse available to you, spawning in wherever you are, is even more crucial to the experience. But moving on from that, there's the fact that you can do more on horseback. You can traverse the landscape. You can do so much more on horseback that it becomes part of the experience of playing Elden Ring, where you can double jump on a horse. You have ways of getting to higher ground. They realize that you need more methods, because there's verticality. You have this big world. You want to be able to get around, and you don't want to have to get off your horse all the time. And even if you do, it will spawn in to where you are. And they made that part. That's a very clear design choice too, because they made that part of the gameplay to where figuring out how to get somewhere high or somewhere low becomes kind of like a puzzle, and it actually becomes an exploration tool. And a lot of this comes down to design choices that just make Zelda, like I said, restriction. It's very restrictive, right? Another choice is, and everyone argues over this, is the weapon durability. Your weapons break very fast. And you can argue whatever you want that it makes you change up your, the weapons you use. Otherwise, you wouldn't use the different weapons. Blah, blah, blah. You can design enemies that require different weapons. I never subscribe to that notion that this is a grand design choice to make you try out different weapon styles. No, you can make bosses or enemies that you using different weapons, which Elden Ring does, will give you better results. And it's funny because, say what you want, it's clear that Zelda took some inspiration from Dark Souls in their combat design. It does feel much more like a Dark Souls type design, and it is a lot tougher than any other Zelda game. So making these comparisons is fair. And even From Software, who in the past had weapon durability in their Dark Souls game, right? Even they decided with this game, we want to make this game more accessible, so we're going to let the weapons have no durability. We're going to let people just use the weapon as much as they want, and they will not break. Not that it was ever a big deal in Dark Souls, because you could just repair it, So it was never even a big deal there, and it lasted way longer. But once again, I don't know what they were thinking with this design choice, especially the fact that they break so fast. That being really the part that's really inexcusable is how fast they break. And I don't want to stay on this for too long, so let's move on. Right? Exploration and the feeling of being rewarded, right? This is another thing to where, and this might be the key reason why this Zelda game does not even feel like a Zelda game to me. Because in past Zelda games, you would go to a dungeon and you would get crucial tools that help you traverse the world. But now, because they wanted to make this open world game design where you can tackle the world in any order, they chose to give you the main abilities of the game up front, right? And you can argue the positives and the negatives to this, because you can mix and match abilities, and a lot of the rewarding factors from Zelda Breath of the Wild comes from using your tools, using your abilities to kind of manipulate the environment. And this can be very cool. But at the same time, you lose that sense of forward progress you get from getting to a dungeon and getting a tool that makes you think back of an area you couldn't get to before, and now you can suddenly get to because you got this tool, and it just takes away that feeling of of discovery. Because now when you come across a chest in most areas, what do you get? That's right. You get one of those weapons that's gonna break a minute later. And I cannot tell you just how awful it felt when I first started the game and you're clearing a camp, you're clearing a camp and you're killing enemies and you're doing these things and you're coming across chests and you get a weapon and it's just like this feeling. I just got this immediate feeling of disappointment, to where in past Zelda games, coming across a chest always felt like an event. It felt like something special. Like, even if it wasn't a big tool, there was always something of value, which I feel is kind of gone from this, Breath of the Wild version of the game. The stamina, right? You have a stamina system. Once again, this does harken back to Dark Souls. Like I said, there's a lot of comparisons to be made with these two games. And it's just like they have all these design choices where you're restricted in ways that you shouldn't be restricted. Elden Ring, they removed the stamina system affecting you when you're out of combat, right? So when you sprint in the game, and you're not in combat, it does not take up your stamina. And it was like that in past games, but once again, they made these design choices to make the game more accessible, which also makes the game a lot more fun to play, because you're not just tediously running out of stamina, running out of stamina before you even get into combat. Now, in Elden Ring, you only run out of stamina or use up stamina when you're in combat, and another design choice with Zelda, where I don't know why they decide to restrict it, because Zelda's not known for being the type of game to have these restrictions. I guess they just want it to feel realistic, even though that's not really what Zelda usually aims for. But I guess for the sake of realism, they said, let's add stamina system to sprinting. Let's add it to climbing. The climbing part, fine, because it's a tool. They want to restrict you from getting to certain heights, right? So that's fine. But why gliding? Why, when you glide, why can't I just glide to where I want to get to without worrying about my character losing grip? I mean, that sounds like something you would see in an older From Software game. Why did you do that for Zelda? And swimming. You swim and you have stamina, and once again, it's realistic, but do you need that in a Zelda game? And this harkens also back to the weapon durability. I just want to quickly mention the fact that you have all these cool little tools you can use, like sliding down a hill on your shield, but then the weapon durability kicks in, and if you choose to slide down the hill, you're going to be degrading your shield, which it'll break, and then it's like, it makes you not want to use all these cool little features that the game has, because the game is constantly restricting you from using them. And it's just one bad design choice after another, with going even into the way that your inventory works. Like, it's been so long, I can't exactly remember, but isn't it, I think it was an issue I had where you couldn't drop or switch your weapons in a certain way that just never made any sense to me. So I don't know exactly what it was, but my inventory would always get full, and dropping or switching my weapons always became an issue, because it has been a while since I played the game, but you might know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that was also an issue, which was just a weird design choice, or maybe just something they overlooked. But all of these things, you gotta keep in mind that all of these things add up. It's not that Breath of the Wild is a bad game. It's not that Breath of the Wild isn't a game that things that were fresh and new in the open world genre. And since I'm mentioning it, also, they could have had a recipe list where you didn't, because I never saw an actual menu recipe list. Maybe I overlooked that, but they could add a recipe list to where when you discover a recipe or you make a recipe, there's a list of the ones you have already there. But they made all these design choices that just kind of make the experience feel much less of a Zelda game and something else. And maybe that's why you like this newer Zelda. But to me, it is not true to what Zelda was. And Elden Ring very much stays true to its Dark Souls roots. And it expands on it. And it makes it more accessible. And it streamlines some things, which some people might not. It depends on how you feel. But overall, if you're a fan of the series, you know, the Souls series, you're not gonna find much to hate about Elden Ring. But if you're really a hardcore fan of the Zelda series, then this newer version, this newer open world edition is very much a departure from that. That's just how I feel about it. But how do you feel about it? So this is the part where in the comment section you completely roast me, because I know how many people love when it comes to Breath of the Wild. I am going to be straight. I'm never going to hold back. This is what this channel is about. It is honest critic, right? It is my opinion that's on this channel. I am being honest about what I thought was wrong with that game, with Breath of the Wild. This is me breaking it down for you. You can agree with some points, you could disagree with some points, you could point out if I'm wrong about some points. That's fine. I love constructive criticism. I love it when people point out things I didn't know, because I'd love a reason to go back and play Breath of the Wild and get into it and finally click with that game, because I've tried to play it several times over the years, 3 or 4 times at least. I even sold it and bought it again, and it's never clicked with me. But this has been Honest to Critic. And as always saying, if you're gonna be a critic, be honest. Catch you next time.